Everybody, welcome to Sprague Woodturning. My name is Jim. If you haven't been here before, this is predominantly a turning channel. If it doesn't go on the lathe, I typically don't like to do it. And this week, we're going to be making something colorful. I've got some cherry, some walnut, some resin blocks, and of course some resin shavings. So we're going to combine this into one casting. Not exactly sure what it's going to be yet, but whatever it is, it's going to be colorful. All right, let's get over the casting bench and see what we're going to do with this piece. Here is the bucket that we're going to use, and this is an ice cream container, 11.4 liter size. I like it because it's deep, and it's great for making hollow forms, this kind of business. So this is going to be our walnut base, and I didn't have a piece of walnut that was large enough. It doesn't really matter because, you know, at the most we're going to have a foot that's probably this wide. So that goes in there. Now, I've been working on this and figuring this out a little bit, and of course inside these buckets they're tapered, so if you want to get the best size out of the pieces of wood you put in here and the casting in general, then it's probably best to cut these on an angle, and that's what I've done here. But anyway, I'll show you how to do that. But what I want to do is take this piece and I want to lay it out. I'm only going to be putting 4 of these cherry blocks in here. This is a center finder. I'm trying to put some wood behind it so you can see. And I actually got this one off of Amazon. You can get them at any place that sells wood turning supplies, pretty much. And so anyway, what I've done is on these lines that you see here, I've drilled a hole. And what we're going to do is take the drill bit for this hole and for the one that I drilled here. And this is a quick and easy way to figure out where to put your pieces and make them nice and even. So on this dark walnut, you might have a hard time seeing this. You could try and measure these if you want it, but this to me seems to be so much easier to do. Once that's done, this will be the center, of course. All right, so the other thing too, we're going to use this as a spacer in the center, and this is another way so that you can do this. So the bottom, or I should say the diameter of this, is 3 1/4 inches. So this only goes, I believe, in 1/2 inch scales. So, you know, if we keep this should work fine. So there's 3 1/2. And what I'll do is I'll glue this in place, and then that way we'll be able to just glue to these pieces and glue on here. And I don't know if I'll glue on here, but I certainly will try to probably glue on the inside of this. All right, anyway, I'm just waiting for the glue gun to heat up, and then we'll be able to carry on here. To get this measurement, it's actually fairly easy. I know that walnut block will fit inside the bottom of my bucket perfectly. I then took that and set it inside the bucket with the plastic spacer, the bottle there, and measured across the top. And then once I got that measurement, I marked it out on the piece of wood and then basically freehand cut it on the bandsaw. And then once I've got a template, then all 4 should be the same. And that's probably the easiest way to figure this out. If you're using larger, beefier pieces of wood, then of course you can tilt the bed on the bandsaw, and usually I find 3 degrees is about the taper of most buckets that you're going to find on the market. Anyway, that's been my experience here. Anyway, I put the first one on and then I tried it in the bucket before cutting the rest of them to make sure that it was going to work. So make sure you do that. And then basically I'm just lining these up by eye. I've got a mark on the very end of the walnut piece, and I'm just basically put them on center. And of course, it's important to make sure that they're level. That way it doesn't look odd after everything is cast. There are certainly other ways to go about this, but I found that this was the easiest one for me. All right, so while this hot melt glue is hardening up, let's cut up some resin pieces and get them ready to go inside. So I've used these resin blocks, I don't know, 2 or 3 times now, and basically these are, when you see me pour epoxy, if there's leftover epoxy, I'll throw some color in it if there isn't color in it already, and then just pour it in on top of these either cups or containers. And then once you've got a full container, then of course you can, if you want to, turn these as they are into something. I prefer to cut them up and then use them in castings in some regard or another. But after cutting them on the bandsaw, it leaves behind a pretty rough surface. So I like to just hit, this is 60 grit on my belt sander, and just take away those really, the majority of the saw marks from the bandsaw. All right, we got lots of these. I don't even know. I don't think I'll use this many. Anyway, the last time I did this, when I was doing it, it was just kind of all smashed into pieces and flying everywhere. And the suggestion was to use a pillowcase. Now I don't have an old pillowcase, but I think that this should work fine. So that's just a steel plate. And of course, handy dandy hammer here. Put that over top of this, and we'll see see how much stuff flies. The only problem is you can't see what's happening. There we go. I want different sizes, so that works fine. So this was fairly effective. If I was using a pillowcase, I don't think that it would have lasted very long. I've just started on this and it's full of holes. So the resin, of course, when it breaks apart is actually razor sharp. You can cut yourself quite easily with it. So it's going to do quite a number on anything that you're using here. I don't really know what an alternative could be. Maybe if you had a piece of Kevlar, maybe that would work. But anyway, this was effective, but we definitely won't be using this towel for anything else after it. That's for sure. Well, that's probably not going to be enough, but we'll start with that. I don't want to break any more up than I have to, because I have a plan for the other ones. Alright, so I have got lots of different colors. Yellow, it's probably lemon glitter, I think, maybe. Anyway, take a chunk of that out. So here I can tell it looks like it's purple and blue. That's about a little bit more, but it's going to have to do, because it's all there is. Big hunk of this red and white stuff. Big hunk of this stuff. And some more blue. Alright, well, I don't really know. There's probably 1,000 different ways that this could be put in there, so, you know, I'm just going to, let's pack one color per area here. Now I'm going to try and avoid the smaller bits. I mean, like really small stuff. Last time I did something similar to this, I basically threw all of these resin chunks into the piece. And what happened was all of the smaller resin pieces ended up going to the bottom of the casting. So that's why I'm going for larger pieces this time. That way it's more uniform throughout it. Anyway, I've got to hammer up some more of these. I'll bring it back when that's ready. I think the next time I do something like this, I'm going to do it more random, where I basically got the resin chunks spaced out throughout the casting. So throw in a little bit of the resin shavings, throw in a little bit of the smashed up resin block, and then so on, and build that all the way up. I'm not displeased with the way this looks. I think that it's actually quite nice. And the one thing that I'm doing differently with this casting is I'm not going to put a weight on this piece to push down on the resin shavings. We did that before and that worked fine, but I thought I would try something different this time around. There, that's about as tight as I can get them. should be something else. I know that this is going to shrink as we put the epoxy in here. The reason why this stuff is white is because it's probably got a lot of air because it was peeled off. So anyway, I think it's best to throw this in the vacuum chamber. But before we do that, let's mix up some resin. This week we're going to be using deep casting epoxy from Designer Epoxy. Now this is way, and I mean way over the manufacturer's recommended depth of pour. So to have any chance of not getting any thermal cracking, we're going to have to use a deep casting epoxy like this one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use all 5 hyper shifts. So I love my hyper shift, and well, I think in all 5 of these would be pretty cool looking, so let's find out. I'll do about, this is 1/4 of a teaspoon. I'll do about a 1/2 teaspoon of each one, or 1/2 of a quarter, otherwise known as an 1/8. I haven't talked much about this, but it is important to really mix your epoxy thoroughly. Designer Epoxy recommends between 2 to 3 minutes of mixing, and while you're doing that, make sure you scrape the sidewalls and the bottom of the bucket. That way it's thoroughly mixed and you won't have any issues. Okay, if I had to guess, I'm going to say that this is probably going to take 3 of these. Yeah, I'll bring you back when I'm ready for the next one here. After the second bucket goes in, you can really tell that the shavings are starting to shrink up a little bit. So I'm pushing down on a stick. I'm just trying to get a feel for how much more epoxy you need to mix up. So I thought it was best to do this before I mix more up. Yeah, it's going to take at least 1 more, so I'll mix that up and I'll be right back. And here's another 1.5 liters. Vacuum chamber next. You can't see it, but there's a little half bucket down below this to catch any overflow. Hopefully there isn't, but there's going to be a lot of air comes out of this. So let's see what we got. A lot of people are curious as to why I use the vacuum chamber, and it's basically to remove any air that's in the casting. Of course, it's most effective when everything that you've got in the vacuum chamber is covered by the resin, but as you can see right here, it's not. So it's important to shut the vacuum chamber off and top up the resin so that everything remains submerged in it. I can't even remember how many I've put in there now. So since I don't have a cap on this, and the reason why I don't have a cap on this is because it needs to be able to breathe, because if you put a tight cap on that, what will happen is it'll probably implode inside of the vacuum chamber. So that's why there's no cap. But I figured that I would put this on, and that way it's got a hole in the top, that way it can vent. So anyway, that was a lot better. I'm able to leave the vacuum on a lot longer and not have it fill that plastic spacer or little container that's in the center of this. It never even dawned on me when I first put it in, but yeah, if you were to screw a cap on that tightly, then in all likelihood, well, probably the cap will fail, but anyway, it's not going to work out so well for you. So something with a hole in it, like this little spout, works best. Okay, that's been 15 minutes. I'm just going to release the vacuum and top this up, and we'll get it in the push pot. All right, I'm just going to throw this in the push pot. See you guys in 3 days. Well, that's what we're looking at. Light adjusted here. Lots of resin shavings on the top, and you can see the levels dropped off quite a bit, but I have no idea how far it is. I think that this is going to have to sit another day, but I'm a little worried about the size of this, that maybe we might have some thermal cracking, so I thought I would pull it out today and have a look at it, and then if we need to fix it, then we can. Oh, my bucket broke. Oh, my favorite bucket. Yeah, man. Another one for the recycle bin. She's going to be colorful. That is for sure. I think that looks like a thermal crack, maybe. Well, that's unfortunate. It's my favorite bucket. So what do we do here is the question. I don't know. It's funny how there's lots of voids around this set of resin pieces, but not so much around this set. You would think that it would be better down below. You know, the epoxy, when it's curing, just does weird and wacky things that you just can't explain. But that definitely is a thermal crack right there. Is it going to be a problem? Is the question. Yeah, it looks like it goes in quite deep. Well, I can't believe that that bucket broke on me, because all I was going to do was just put a little spacer in the bottom of this and then throw some more hypershift in this. The only place that I can see is right there, and I don't even know if the camera is going to be able to pick that up. And I think really all we got to do is throw some more hypershift in there and it'll be good. To give us a fighting chance to work on this tomorrow, we're going to use the Pro Series this time, because it will, in 24 hours, it will be ready to go. So, you know, when I'm a little worried about these castings, that's what I will do. I will pull them out at the 2-day mark and have a look at them, and if anything needs to be fixed, then I'll do it then. And what I did was I took some Gorilla Tape and taped the inside and the outside of the bucket so that I can reuse it again. And we haven't done this before, so I thought I would throw the epoxy in on the bottom and see what happens. All right, vacuum chamber coming up next. Well, it'll be interesting to see if we can bring that resin to the top. It's kind of an experiment for me at this stage. I don't know. Anyway, here we go. Or not. So there is a spacer in the bottom of this casting bucket, and this is kind of an experiment. This has been suggested in the comments before, to basically put the epoxy in the bottom of the casting bucket and then put the casting in on top of it. And because we've had issues with it flowing down the sides. Now, it doesn't work here, so I have to mix more epoxy and throw it on the top. But, you know, I'm always trying to improve the way that I do these castings, so it didn't work this time though. Well, I don't know. I don't see any of it. Maybe it needs a larger volume for it to come up to the surface here, but I guess I better mix up another one and pour it on the top and see what happens here. I mean, the whole goal is to fill that crack in, but there could be other ones as well that we can't see. So I'll mix some more resin up and I'll bring you back. All right, this is another 600 milliliters, so this will bring it to 1.2 liters. So I'm not a fan of using 1.2 liters of epoxy to fill in a small crack, but on the other hand, it did solidify or fill in the very top of this casting. That way we're able to have a deeper vase. So that's another way to look at it. This week also I'm using a spacer, and I know that I was rather passionate about talking about spacers last week, and I'll clarify that a little bit further on. But I knew that this was going to be a vase, and so, you know, I didn't see the point in filling that in with resin when I knew that what exactly this was going to be. I didn't know exactly what kind of a vase it was going to be, but I knew it was going to be a vase. Anyway, this is way over the manufacturer's depth of pour, like I said earlier, and it's amazing that we didn't get more thermal cracking in it than we did. I forgot to measure it, but I think it's 9 inches deep. All right, I'm going to release the vacuum on this and get it in the pressure pot before this starts to set up. A little worried about that. So I'm pretty confident that we got it, but I guess you never know. Well, I guess we'll know tomorrow. I would say the resin level on the top is definitely lower, so that's a positive sign anyway. Anyway, see you guys tomorrow. All right, so it is the next day. Let's see if we can get this out. Should be able to just pull this out. Just a suction thing. It's a little hard to see, but that's where the thermal crack is, and it appears to be filled in, so that's good. That was the only one I seen yesterday. We'll get some centers and figure out what we're going to do on the top here. Might have to do some grinding to get those on the lathe. So while the camera work isn't exactly the best, it was I was making it comfortable for me and forgot about you guys. Sorry about that. Anyway, it's important to get down to solid wood, so that's what I'm using here. I actually had to drill this out with a larger bit because I forgot that it was going to be on the drive center. And then to cut off these cherry pieces, I'm just using the Sawzall here. I thought that was going to be a lot faster than trying to use the grinder to grind it down. And then when that's done, I am going to take the grinder and try and grind out that spacer and get it out. But with all the glue that was holding that spacer in place, it put up quite a fight. I cut out a lot of footage to get this spacer out. Trust me, it wasn't any fun. And this video is way too long as it is. So this certainly doesn't always happen for me. I put the cone on my live center that's on the tailstock, and I said, oh, I'm going to use this to hold the casting between centers. And of course, thinking that it was not going to be centered at all, but when I put it on, it actually was centered almost perfectly. I was shocked because it just doesn't usually go that way for me. Another way around that would have been to grind essentially the top part of this flat and then hot melt glue a piece of wood on the very top of it for something for the live center to push on. That would be another way to pinch this between centers. But I got lucky and it worked out for me this time around. I should mention that we're using the Hercules here from Hunter Tool Systems. And again, just like all of my other sponsors, there are links in the description to get 10% off or more on your order when you use code INLAYGYM at checkout. So we're going to whittle this down and hoping that there's no more thermal cracking. On the very bottom of this, with that straight hyper shift with the clear resin, I really like the look of it. You'll see it every now and then when it shuts off here. And it gives us a really cool look. So, you know, I definitely want to do a casting with this in the future. I think combined with pine cones, it may look pretty cool. So we'll definitely see that in the future as well. But anyway, I'm just trying to get rid of all this excess resin, and then we'll figure out exactly what we're going to do from there. There, right at the end of that shot, it was really cool looking stuff. Love it. I know that sometimes when you look at a thumbnail picture, it's sometimes hard to determine the size of something, but with a zoomed out view, it certainly gives you a good idea as to how large this casting is. And yeah, the resin stringers and being able to see out of your self-powered respirator can be an issue. And again, this is the power cap from GSP that I'm using. I get it out of Peak Safety in the US since there's no Canadian distributor. It wasn't cheap, but I certainly prefer it over my Trend. Seems to filter better and it's lighter. I know there's been some people asking questions about that, and I've owned 3 of the Air Shield Trend Air Shield Pros, and I decided to go to this, and so far so good. It was probably twice the price of the Trend Air Pro Shield, but it does seem to be a much better self-powered respirator. I definitely want to remove all this epoxy from the very bottom of this piece. I could have left probably enough there to make a bead if I wanted to, but it just, for my liking, it just wouldn't have gone with this piece, but you certainly could have. But it gives you a really good look as to what that will look like when it's just clear with the 5 hyper shifts. So we are definitely going to be seeing that in the future. Talking about spacers, I know that last week I was maybe on a little bit of a rant in regards to spacers. And that's because whenever I don't put spacers in the work, you know, people in the comments are like, oh, I can't believe you wasted this resin and you know, just on and on. So I was trying to, it was a preemptive strike to stop these comments. And I know there's a lot of people saying, you know, it's your epoxy, your vision, you do you. And like, I 100% agree with that. But, you know, I know that every time that I don't explain why I'm not using a spacer, then there's all kinds of negative comments in regards to wasting epoxy and this, that, and everything else. So that's kind of why I was a little passionate last week about why I typically don't use the spacers, and that's why. So anyway, enough about that. I don't mention it very often, but I am on Instagram and I do have a business Facebook account. It's not under my personal Facebook account. And I'm working with Vuve Media, and Vuve Media is taking these finished YouTube videos and condensing them down into a smaller format and running them on my business Facebook account. So that's under Sprague Woodturning. So I would appreciate it if you go over there and subscribe to that channel. And if you do like watching condensed videos, there's not going to be any voiceovers. There's not going to be, it's basically the videos are being played to music, and I know a lot of people like that. So head over there and check that out. I would appreciate it. Alrighty, what do you think so far? I'm not overly concerned about any bubbles down in this lower half because this is going to be considerably smaller. But what I want to do here is I want to make this foot smaller, like a lot smaller, and then gradually come out of the vase, up the bottom, and then do this number. So the top of the vase is going to be sloped over, I think. We've got still got some figuring out to do. The one and only thermal crack is right here. Don't know if you're going to be able to pick that up or not. Turn this light off. You might be able to. Yeah, right there. Anyway, it looks like it's all been filled in. There's one little spot there, but this is going to be considerably smaller, so we might even delete this completely. One thing that I never really thought of, I was concerned about gluing these onto that spacer, but now we've got a gap here. Now, as this gets smaller, this gap should close up. But yeah, for some reason I wasn't thinking about that. Color-wise, I don't know. It's a lot more pinkish than I want it to be, but when it's polished with all the hypershift in there, I think that it's going to look really cool. Definitely colorful, lots of color. The majority of the bubbles are around the pieces that were cast, so again, this will probably get a resin coat, I'm assuming. We might even try a resin finish on this one. But anyway, that's where we're at. Considerably smaller base. Come up out of here and then flow it over look like it's flowed over the edge. The size of this hole could be an issue. We'll have to see about that. But anyway, you sure can share your thoughts right now and tell me what you think or what you would make it into. This kind of clashes with this, and I had really seriously debated on putting a walnut piece on the top, but if I'm going to do that, then I don't see the point in doing kind of like the flower thing on the very top here. I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes, and maybe I'll change my mind on that. But right now, I'm not overly happy with the color that's in here, but I've certainly worked on stuff like this before, and it ended up being fantastic, so who knows. Anyway, at this point, we're just going to keep whittling this away. I do want to put a glue block on this, so we might actually turn this around and put it in the coal jaws right now and get that over with. So yeah, I guess we better do that next. Since this piece pretty much just has straight walls, the coal jaws really will not hold that all that well. So it's important that you use tailstock support here. Trust me, the first time you hit the Hercules to that without tailstock support, it's coming off of there. And once that's done, I just sand at the very bottom with the lathe off to 60 grit. And then of course we got to get our glue block on that's been dipped in hot melt glue in an electric frying pan. After about 15 minutes, once the glue is all hardened up, then it's time to size this tenon. And I'm just using the Ellsworth gouge to do that. You'll also see me use the go, no-go gauge. And on that gauge, it has, there it is right there, as the largest tenon that my chuck will hold and the smallest tenon. And for work like this, I'll typically make the tenon about the midway point between the largest that it can be and the smallest that it can be. I certainly can make them smaller and have made them smaller here on the channel. And I should mention that this glue-on tenon is all end grain, so I'm not worried about it breaking apart. And when it comes to chucks, when they're almost fully closed, where the jaws are almost touching each other, that's going to give you the most, say, grip strength on a tenon. But, you know, sometimes size does matter. This is a fairly hefty casting. I did forget to weigh it. I should have weighed it. I'm bad at that, ain't I? But anyway, having kind of in the middle, to me, makes sense. You've got a larger tenon, but you've also got a lot of grip strength on the tenon itself. Well, our thermal crack didn't get filled in all the way. It actually goes all the way through to the inside, so I've taped the inside with some Gorilla Tape, so hopefully that will stop any resin from going through here. You know, I thought for sure that we had it. There's no other cracks anywhere else in this piece. So anyway, what I'm going to do, this is actually just a plastic sleeve, and what I've done is cut a small section of it here, and I'll just use that as a dam. Gotta fine tune it a little bit more. A little bit more curvature. Alright, so while I'm waiting for that to cure up, I'm going to mix up some Pro Series and I'll be right back. Okay, you might hear my heater running there in the background. This is 3 ounces of the Pro Series. Alright, I'm going to give it a little bit more. I put way too much in before. There, that should be lots. It's going to be warm enough out here for this to set. I think so. Anyway, I'm just going to leave this right here on the lathe and hope that we don't get any leaks on the inside. And we'll be able to carry on with this again tomorrow. Yeah, I'm still very undecided if this thing's going to look good or not. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. I'm not a real pink color guy, so I know that a lot of people are, but it's really not my thing. Anyway, see you tomorrow. Well, we had a small leak, but that's no big deal. You can see the hypershift through there, so that's awesome. And I filled in, there was a little hole here. I filled that in yesterday and then put a piece of tape over it. So that's all good to go. Let's trim this back and see what we're looking at. Thanks again to the new members that have joined my channel. I really absolutely do appreciate it. I have been getting some messages from people saying that they can't join. And we found out that if you're using an Apple product, what you need to do is go to like youtube.com, not on the app. And when you go to youtube.com, do a search for my channel. And what you may have to do is sign in or sign out and then sign back in. And then there will be a join button there. My wife was having the same problem, and we figured out that was the issue. I think she Googled it. She's so much better at computer stuff than I am. But anyway, I've gotten a number of messages from people saying that they want to join. So like I said, just go to youtube.com, sign out, sign in, do a search for my name, and then the join button will be there, and you can join for $2.99 Canadian a month. And anyway, I'm going to try and I'm still working on this membership thing. It's kind of new to me, so please be patient. But I've been sharing kind of progress photos of certain pieces, but I probably haven't been sharing enough. So I'll try to make sure to share more. And in the future, I'm actually going to try and get the members involved as far as picking colors is concerned. And that way, when things don't look well, I can just say, well, this is what the members wanted, so you can blame them. So along with the new members, we also have a lot of new subscribers. And, you know, I'll try to do this regularly and give you a little bit of my background. I'm Canadian. I was in the Canadian Armed Forces in the Army for 24 years, and I retired in 2012. While I was serving, I was doing wood turning on the side to supplement my income. And when I retired in 2012, then I just took the uniform off and stepped to the lathe full time. And this is what I've been doing ever since. The pandemic hit, and all of the shows were shut down because I was traveling Ontario, in the province of Ontario here, to all these jury dart shows. And I was basically forced into YouTube, and I absolutely love it. I can't imagine doing anything else now. Well, okay, as we go deeper and deeper into this, we're finding more thermal cracks. This is a pretty decent sized one that, you know, we didn't see until it was exposed now. There's a little crack there. Here's the original one that I filled. There's a little one there, which isn't really that big of a deal. But anyway, I've got to address this now, because if I don't, when we go to hollow out the inside of this, it's going to be a problem. So what I'm going to use is the UV resin this time. And I know that this is fairly deep. So what I'm going to do, and I'm worried about it actually coming through. So I've got 2 UV lights. So what I'm going to do is just stick this one on here. That way, if any of this UV resin actually comes through the casting, it will be cured by the UV light. And then I've transferred some of it here with all 5 hyper shifts into this squeeze bottle. So hopefully we'll be able to fill these all up and move forward with this, because well, we're starting to run out of time. It would be ideal to use the Pro Series here again, but like I said, I was really starting to get short on time. So UV resin works. Got to do it a couple times, but it certainly does work. Yeah, so if you haven't seen this before, it's cured with a UV light. And since this is so deep, I'm going to leave this light on here for 10 minutes. And hopefully with this light shining inside and this light here, it will cure up this UV resin and we won't have any issues. I'm going to go around and fill the other spots, and I'll bring it back when we're all ready to go again. And for those who are wondering, no, I don't hold that light there for 10 minutes. I put the UV resin in. It doesn't take long at all, like literally seconds for it to skin over. And then I just lay the light down on top of it. I don't hold that for 10 minutes. Anyway, like I said, this does work. I've got to do it a couple of times just because at this stage that crack was really deep and it was really hard for that UV resin to migrate down inside of there. 10 minutes may seem extreme, but due to the fact that how deep the crack was, I wanted to give it all the opportunity in the world to cure that resin up, and it did. And any of the resin that came through was either cured by the UV light on the inside, or of course the other light that was on the outside. So as you watch me round over this top, again, you know, I'm not going to say I'm winging it. I want a top that's basically flowing over. And I know that there's probably going to be some, that looks like a spittoon comment. I'm fully anticipating this. but spittoons, because I just looked it up, don't look anything like this. They don't have rounded over edges like that. So, but anyway, I'm sure there's going to be some spittoon comments. That's fine. Let her fly. Anyway, getting up underneath of this float over edge was quite difficult. You'll see me try 2 or 3 different tools to get up under here. And I find eventually that the parting tool is actually the easiest one to get up underneath there. That is the Phoenix that I'm using. And it does do a good job. It just needed a little more room in there to work effectively. So here you'll see me switch out to the parting tool from Crown. And that way I was able to open up that area so that, you know, you can get other tools in there to work it like that. That's the Phoenix again. So anyway, a little bit of trial and error and figuring it out, and eventually I get it. Swinging the parting tool in an arc was actually quite effective as well. You can, when the lathe stops, if it stops in the same spot again, you'll see that little crack that I had just filled in with the UV resin. There it is. It's still there. I'd say probably half of it's been filled up. But anyway, getting back to basically who I am, I was using wood turning as a release from the military, just the day-to-day grind that it brings. And so it was nice to go out and workshop and kind of forget that and make something creative and just basically live a completely different life than the life that I was living at the time. I am self-taught. Back in the day, all I did was read books. Yes, books. And CDs and VHS tapes. Yes, I said VHS. It's still a thing, you know. Well, what do you think of our mushroom? Because I don't know, it's giving me mushroom vibes, you know what I'm saying? Oh man. Anyway, it's something we haven't done before, and it is kind of cool. Very difficult to get up underneath here and cut this cleanly and not have a devastating catch. But anyway, again, just small little cracks. This one here is probably about 50% filled. This is the one that I just did here not too long ago, and well, it needs it again. So I'm going to do that, trim this up, and then we'll get ready to do the inside of this. So before we do any hollowing, I want to basically establish the opening on this, and then from there we'll be able to set up the hollowing rig and do the cavity on this piece. But yeah, like from the side when I was standing there looking at this thing, I'm like, man, you know, I created a mushroom. I don't know, a mushroom from a foreign planet that's, I don't know, it's out to kill us all. That's kind of where my mind was going with this. But in the end, I figure out exactly what this is, and it should have been so obvious to me, but I just completely missed it. And it probably wasn't until the finish went on it where I was like, oh yeah, that's what this is. All right, we're all set up and ready for hollowing. This is the one-way captive system. You can get it from oneway.ca. And we're going to start with the retrofit tool from Hunter Tool Systems. And anyway, we'll stick with this, the majority of it. At the very bottom, I may have to switch back to the teardrop cutter. But other than that, we're going to stick with that tool. I think that's probably about 5/8 of an inch, somewhere around there. We'll close that up later on. Let's do it. Since we got such a large opening, the hollowing on this was actually fairly easy to do. I was predominantly using the retrofit tool, and then you'll see me switch out to the teardrop cutter, and you know, it was working really smooth in here. Those shavings, the last experience that I had with turning basically casted shavings, it's hard to cut clean. And I don't know exactly why that is, but I do find that it's really hard to cut clean. Initially on the outside of this piece, I had a ton of chip out, even after it was rounded, which is not normal. So I had to really slow down my cuts to get rid of that chip out. And it was the same thing on the inside of this piece as well. Having those cherry pieces in there may affect things as well. There's a teardrop cutter that you can buy from One Way to go on the system. And, you know, I usually like to use this just in the very bottom. Sometimes the retrofit tool will work too, but the cutter's got to be really almost at a straight on off the tip of the tool angle. But anyway, that little teardrop scraper works quite well down in the bottom of these castings, and that's typically where you'll see me use it. But at this stage, I just kept with the teardrop cutter as it seemed to be cutting well. So, you know, if it's cutting well, I wasn't going to change it. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type deal. Anyway, there was a bunch of bubbles on the inside of this, which again, I was fully anticipating. Every time you do shavings, resin shavings or shavings period, you're probably going to end up with a lot of bubbles in your work. But it wasn't too bad on this piece. Okay, there's what the inside looks like. Sorry, you might hear my heater running in the background. That is a big thermal crack right in there that just haven't been able to fill on the outside. So what I've done, put a piece of tape on the outside, and we're going to use the UV resin again. And now that this is on the inside, hopefully you can see it there. Hopefully we'll be able to fill that, and then take some final passes, and then hopefully move on to sanding. So as you've seen in that last clip, there's still some work to be done in this piece. And, you know, I'm not going to turn this to its finished dimension and then do that UV resin, because that's not going to work for you. You definitely want to leave yourself a little bit of thickness that you can turn away to even things out. You know, there's probably there is people that are a lot better at this than I am as far as hollowing is concerned. I do find it still challenging to get a nice even curve through there without having any little divots in it. And I mean, I've been doing this a while now. So the laser, still getting some comments where people don't really understand the laser. So right now I've closed the laser up and it's sitting at about 1/2 inch. And so essentially when you're watching the laser on the outside of the vase, when that laser elongates on the side or drops off of the piece, you know that you've achieved that wall thickness. There's a thick area right there, because you can see that the laser's more of a point. But as it elongates, then that means you're achieving that wall thickness. And of course, I've got the wheels and the bar above it right now, so you can't really see it on the upper part of the vase. It's only visible on the bottom part of the vase. I do intend on modifying this steady rest. It's on the long list of things to do, but essentially that's how the laser works. And I know that there's been a few questions about that, so hopefully everybody understands it now. All right, there's the surface. It's not too bad. Got some waves in there, but overall it's actually pretty good. Whew. All right, sanding coming up next. So what I'm sanding here with are the 6-inch PSA back discs. So it's just basically stuck to my hand, and this is 60 grit. I typically start at 60 until I can get it flat-ish. I'm not going to switch out to the drill with the sanding attachment on it. I find that it's on the outside. I don't have an issue sanding with the, with the 3.5-inch dipple disc in the drill. But on the inside, it's hard to get feedback from the tool. So I find that it's best to do your hand sanding with sheet goods and then switch out to the 3.5-inch dipple disc like I am here. And, again, I've been using sandpaper.ca for a very long time. Probably 20 years or longer. And I really enjoy the dipple discs. I do prefer power sanding. Hand sanding certainly does have its place, like I said, on the inside of this, and you'll see me doing a little bit on the outside here as well. Now I do plan on putting an epoxy coat on this. So at this stage, I didn't see the point of sanding any higher than 120, so that's all I'm going to do. And then we'll be able to get our first coat of epoxy on this and really truly bring this piece alive. All right, so we're going to be doing an epoxy coat on the inside and the outside. I might actually even try to finish this in epoxy. We'll have to see. Anyway, this is 6 ounces of the Pro Series. Nice and thin, so it should flow well. There is a number of bubbles inside that need to be filled and just a few on the outside too. So I think the epoxy coat is the way to go here. And for the new people, I'm using a silicone barbecue brush. That's what I'm using. Stay away from brushes that have bristles because the epoxy can be quite sticky, and what it will do is pull the bristles out, and then you've got them embedded in your work. So stay away from normal brushes. Well, there you go. What do you think about that? It sure is colorful. And for quite some time now, I've been trying to think about what to call this. And then it dawned on me that this kind of looks like a jellyfish. So we can call it the Jellyfish vase. Good job with the bubbles being filled in. All the voids that were there, they're all filled in now, so very happy with the way this looks. And the hyper shift on the top, amazing stuff. Beautiful. All right, we'll see you tomorrow for the second coat. Let me know in the comments what you think. Certainly something we haven't done before, that's for sure. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, well, it is the next day, and as expected, a lot of this epoxy bubbled, all this end grain, but it definitely did a good job on other parts where it's just strictly resin. So I'm very happy with that. The walnut down there actually pretty much sealed up, so that's awesome. So I think what we're going to do is sand this back and then do another epoxy coat on it. But of course we got some drips here. Drippity drip drip. So now I'm sanding with 180. I don't really want to go in reverse here. The only time that maybe I would go to a lower grit now is if there was a big run somewhere. So then I would probably grind that run out and then switch to the 180 and finish it that way. So yeah, being originally from the east coast of Canada, New Brunswick, our days down at the beach a lot of times consisted of jellyfish fights. So I'm sure we're not alone. And everyone's like, jellyfish fights, doesn't that sting? Well, yeah, it actually probably could sting and did. But hey, don't knock it till you try it. It was a ton of fun. All right, what I got here is 3 ounces of the Pro Series. Let's get our second coat of epoxy on here. So putting on epoxy finishes is no different than, say, using Waterlux. The more finishes, the more coats you put on, the less you're going to use. So you definitely want to keep an eye on that as you're putting these coats on later on, because you can get a lot of runs and sags quite easily. But I will say I love the look of epoxy finishes, but they are challenging to do and to do correctly. Well, I'm not going to take it off and show you, but it's looking a lot better. The wood pieces are anyway. Still see some bubbles coming there, so I'll do my best to burn those off. I'm going to leave this on the lathe and let it rotate for probably at least 2 hours, but probably 3. We had a big snowstorm coming in, so I'm a little worried that we're going to lose power, so hopefully that doesn't bite me. Anyway, if there is another coat of epoxy to be done, I'll do it the same way. Sand it back with 180, do another coat, and we'll see you guys when we're doing the bottom. What do you think? Jellyfish vibes. Well, here's where we are. The bottom's not done. There is 3 coats of epoxy on here, and I'm still getting some bubbling coming through on the wood pieces. They're kind of on every one of them here. So I can't show a finished bottom because I still need to put another coat on. This time I think what I'm going to do is just sand down these bubble areas. The problem is once you break through the epoxy to the surface of the wood, then there's a chance you're going to get bubbles. And that's what's happening. And you know, like these pieces right here, that's all ingrain. Now, ironically, that one is not a problem. But the 2 over here are, and again, this is all ingrain and there's bubbles still coming through it. So you'll probably see it in the rotating footage at the end. But what I will do is, once this is done, I'll put a posting on the community tab so that you can see the finished piece. Total jellyfish vibes to me. I don't know. Share your thoughts on that too. Definitely mushroom looking. Some sort of weird alien plant thing. I don't know. It could be a lot of things. Here's the inside. I will show that. There are some more bubbles inside, but of course they've been filled. But you can still see them inside of the casting. But overall, I mean, when I first started casting resin shavings, I was 100%, I didn't think that it was going to look good, and I was wrong. Now, one of the problems with casting these shavings, and see if I can find it now, if there's one little piece of wood in there, you're going to see it. And I seen it earlier, but I don't know where it went to. So it's not real obvious. Maybe we'll be able to see it in the rotating footage at the end. But anyway, this is why I don't like to use shavings that have the wood embedded in them, because I find they can be an issue. I find it makes the casting look dirty. So that's why I don't like it. But one thing on the very top of this, it really gives it a lot of depth. With that hyper shift in there, it just, I don't know, it looks like it's really deep down inside, and that's awesome. But anyway, it's an interesting piece, and let me know if you're interested in it, because it is for sale. Please send me an email to spraguewoodturning@gmail.com, and I will disclose the price then. But it's certainly one of a kind, that's for sure. Don't forget to put designer epoxy in the comments down below to be entered into the next giveaway, 3-gallon giveaway at 115,000 subscribers when we get there. Along with that, designer epoxy wanted me to share a deal that they got coming up. So from 12 Jan to the 18th, Designer Epoxy is offering a free UV resin, so the resin bottles that you see me use here on the channel, a free light, 10 free color bags, and free shipping within continental USA and Canada. The only thing they ask is that you need to spend $300 with them, and that's $300 Canadian, so you know, that's a fantastic deal. You're getting $150 back, because that's the cost of the UV resin and the light. So it's a fantastic deal. My code will not work during this time because of, I mean, it's such a great deal. So anyway, if you've been waiting to try the UV resin, certainly give it a try now, because it's a fantastic product. I use it almost on every casting now, and I highly recommend it. So please check it out. What else is there? I should mention that the vase itself is 9 inches tall. I'll put the metric conversion up. 8.5 inches across the very widest point of it, and it's about a 1/2 inch thickness thereabouts. Maybe a little thinner in some spots. Down on the base, maybe a little heavier. All right, hopefully you enjoyed the video. I know it was a long one. Again, thanks to the new members. Thanks to people that are sending me super chats, super stickers. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for that. And I guess that's it. I don't know what we're going to do next week. I haven't even cast anything. I'm kind of panicking about that. It's been a busy week. Snow removal and anyway, other stuff. Well, all right, that's it. Take care, stay safe. Don't forget the bell. Please share my videos with your friends. That is the largest way for me to build my presence here on YouTube. And hey, if you haven't subscribed, please do that. The majority of the people that are watching my videos are not subscribed. So if you could subscribe, that would be absolutely awesome. See you next week.